We have a $14 billion a year trade deficit in seafood, and I'm quite eager to convert that into a trade surplus rather than a trade deficit, and that could provide gainful employment to lots of people.
Well, and know that we are absolutely committed to working to reduce that seafood trade deficit as we work to promote domestic and sustainable production. We have some significant opportunities overseas. Alaska has clearly played its role with that. Some markets have been closed off to our seafood exports in recent years due to policies like the seafood trade ban that was implemented by Russia in 2014. So the question to you this afternoon is, or this morning, I guess, is where are we with ensuring that NOAA is working with our regional fishery management councils to really help push out and advance this seafood export and promotion opportunities. And then if you would speak to the Russia ban in terms of the steps that the administration is taking to work towards lifting the Russia seafood ban. It has an average annual impact of about $40 million in Alaska. I hear from my fishermen a lot about this. And then as it relates to the seafood promotion programs, we've got the Salt and Salt Kennedy Grant Fund, and I'm concerned that the proposal is to zero this out. And when you think about those efforts to advance and promote our domestic seafood production, it's Salt and Salt Kennedy that plays such an important role there.
Sure. Well, there are a number of threats to our seafood production. For one thing, the aquaculture that produces a lot of the foreign seafood is conducted under conditions that would not be tolerated in the U.S. So one of our objectives is to try to get better enforcement against them, because those are not being properly done for the most part. Second, there's, I think, also a problem with counterfeiting in that some of the material, I think some of the king crab, alleged king crabs coming in from Russia really aren't king crabs at all. So there are problems in that regard. There's a third problem, which is that Canada, in its free trade agreement with the EU, got an exemption from the tariff that the EU imposes on lobster, whereas we are subject to several percentage points tariffs. So that's a problem, particularly because that free trade agreement between Canada and the EU specifies not only that it should be in Canadian waters, but that it should be in a Canadian vessel. So it's clearly a discriminatory activity against the U.S. So seafood is this year going to be, I think, a pretty big battleground. What we're doing about it is a number of things. There is grant money that's going out to the states to try to develop pilot programs of various types. I spoke at the Aquaculture conference here in Washington several weeks ago. I've met several times with the aquaculture industry, so they know we're trying to be helpful and trying to push things along so that we can compete more effectively, both from a quality point of view in terms of how the aquaculture is conducted and in terms of the dollar volume versus that which is going offshore. So we're pushing very hard on it. It is one of my big priorities.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. I appreciate that. I know that many of us think that the terms of the Trans-Pacific Partnership could benefit our seafood industry.